She only heard the voice one time. She never heard it before, and she hasn't heard it since. So how that works, it's a red flag that she's making up the voice. They asked her, are you having thoughts of harming others? Do you have homicidal ideation? She told Tufts no. She told Gelada no. She told Dukes no. She told Goodhart no. So not only is she hiding it, she's lying about it.
Psychosis.
Visiting doctors, seeing doctors, going to Rhode Island, being told, no, we can't help you. Calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you. Calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it. Watch the evidence. Watch the manipulation. The government's rebuttal witnesses, very, very impressive. So Mac is, why he was freaked out when I asked him where he stayed, and the other guy looked at me like his eyes were bugging. Why did I ask where he stayed? Whatever. Point is, they don't see her for years. Years. And she was cooperative. She was pleasant. She was friendly. She answered the questions, and she owned what she did. Huh? She never ran from anything. She's gone through evaluation after evaluation after evaluation, recorded. You'll have the video to look at as they're questioning her, as she's sitting there in her wheelchair, hour after hour after hour, 3 years after this incident, but that's okay. They're busy. So you have Zeisel that has been with her all that time. You've got Sheila, who's been with her all that time. You've got evidence that her mom and dad, who lived in Connecticut, come up and they stay and they visit with her, and that they sit with her, and God forbid they actually sometimes had dinner. Remember that? They got the Tewksbury records. Boy, there's a good score. Let's go through the Tewksbury records and see what she's doing on the anniversary of the deaths. How about on their birthdays? Can you see them sitting there going through the medical records? Okay, doctor, what did she do then? She propelled herself down the hallway, met with her parents, laughed, had dinner, watched TV, talked on the telephone. God forbid. She's not curled up in the fetal position, wailing, self-flagellating constantly for 3.5 years. She's acting like a human being trying to exist. But they go through the records and they want to get those dates and use them against her. Manipulation. But then you have the MMPI and the other psychological tests that were administered to her on the second day of the Mac Heilbrunn team interviewing, interrogating, questioning her. She passes the MMPI. Testimony is presented. She answered the MMPI honestly. And they're pertaining to state of mind. They're pertaining to questions about what occurred. They're questioning this young lady as to what her state of mind was then, in the middle, and now. And she didn't lie. She didn't malinga. She didn't exaggerate, and more importantly, if anything, she minimizes. But she certainly was off the chart on the suicide scale. And then you have testimony from Dr. Resnick, Dr. Zeisel, Dr. Condon. And they were paid for their testimony. We're all paid, like I said, not the jury so much, but the judge, myself, Chrissy, everybody gets paid. These doctors came in and testified. Phil Resnick, the man is something out of a scary movie. He has the world record of investigating, examining, and treating people in psychosis that kill their children, filicide. He has a world-renowned record for checking fakers to see if a person is malingering. Their doctor agreed that his article on Voices is a leading article with research in the world. Their doctor agreed that he, Bill Resnick, is an expert on malingering. You heard him testify by Zoom because he had surgery. But he showed up by Zoom and testified that, again, 4 months after this incident, he met with Lindsay, he evaluated Lindsay, compared, looked at all the records, just like all the rest of them, everyone says. They looked at all the records, the police reports, grand jury minutes, everything else. He indicates clearly, in his opinion, that she was in a state of psychosis at the time of this death, times 3. Has any of the government doctors rebutted that? One of them, Halbrand, said it's possible either way. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The other one, Mac, you can accept his testimony if you wish, but I suggest that you probably won't. And then you're left with the doctor yesterday, who didn't even know what killing during the course of the psychosis was. And when I was questioning him about it, he agreed. And I said, don't just agree with me. You're just agreeing with me because I said that? And he basically said, yeah. What kind of expert testimony is this? It's a mess. But the government uses them to try to rebut a man like Phil Resnick, who tells you that she was suffering from a horrific mental disease and defect at the time of the killing of her beautiful children. Why, the how, and the fact that under the law, as His Honor has given you, she's not criminally responsible. That the district attorney, you look at her journals that she took, you'll see as you go along in the dates that she's recording in these journals, she's talking about the drugs that she was prescribed. And look at the first page. Look at how detailed. Dates, how she felt, 10 milligrams Prozac, and it goes on like that, goes on through November into December. December 9th, 10th, 11th. Horrible intrusive thoughts. Horrible thoughts in the AM. Horrible thoughts. Horrible thoughts. No motivation. And then finally, horrible thoughts, no motivation, deeply depressed. Then, that's around the time she went to Women and Infants Hospital, right? Looking for help. Look at this. As she runs into January, there's nothing other than little chicken scratches because her mind was gone. In January, as she's on these drugs and she's suffering from what you've heard is postpartum depression that can lead to postpartum psychosis, and you have these men coming in here that don't even know psychosis from schizophrenia as experts, telling you that if a woman doesn't have these symptoms, like it's a disease, symptoms of postpartum depression within 4 weeks, that's it. Lights out. You're not a person that can be considered. You're not a real person for purposes of postpartum depression and or postpartum psychosis. And when you consider the journals, I don't know, you ever watched the movie there, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson? Remember the scene when he's sitting there in a state of complete psychosis, and he's writing a book and he's typing, and the wife finds the book and opens it up and looks at it and says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Repeated after repeated after repeated. And he says, do you like it? You look at the records of her Googling drugs. You look at how many times, how many hours of the night in the afternoon she's looking this stuff up, in between taking care of the family, in between all of the stuff that was going on with visiting doctors, seeing doctors, going to Rhode Island, being told, no, we can't help you, calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you, calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it. She turns herself in to McLean Hospital. You saw the doctor, nice woman. She's testifying. She didn't know. I suggest to you that she didn't know hardly anything, let alone psychosis involving a young lady like her going through what she was going through. You heard the guy yesterday say, and then she sent him off to go to CVS. It's on the way. It's on the way. She didn't want him out of the house long. She was in distress. She wanted him home to help with the bathing, to help with the kids, to help putting them to bed. How long is he going to be gone? She Googles it. Is that something that is so nefarious? You think that goes right along the line with the book about good mothers having bad thoughts. My God, she actually Googled the time frame that Patrick would take to go to 3B and pick up the food and then leave and stop at CVS on the way. So I guess the government is suggesting she's not in a psychosis. So she's Googling Miralax because the doctor earlier that day told her that the baby Cora needed Miralax. Why would she do that? Because remember the government's opening when they told you she wasn't suffering from the psychosis. She was a woman that didn't want to live her life anymore, wasn't happy being a mother, didn't want to live that life. So she's going to kill her kids and hopefully throw herself out the window and not paralyze herself, and then she could run off into the sunset, I guess. That's what their theory was. Along with the fact that it wasn't a real good suicide, it was fake. Well, now we know, don't we? The mess that this young lady was in her brain, my brain is being damaged. I will never be better. That's the evidence. That's the evidence that we have in this case. Burden of proof is on them to prove to you that at the time that she killed these 3 beautiful kids, that she just wanted to move on with her life. And I suggest to you, just as there's no chicken nugget residue, and then when you look at those photographs, there's a slice of a cucumber, there's a slice of a carrot, there's no chicken nuggets in that bowl. Patrick wouldn't know what the kids were eating. She was the one that would cook their dinner. She was in the refrigerator, but the guy yesterday is like, oh, no. Patrick said that the child was eating the chicken McNuggets in the bowl. No. She was getting food out for the 2 kids, not the little baby, 2 kids for dinner. There's no evidence that she's lying. There's no evidence that she's malingering. And finally, you remember there was a big deal about whether or not the voices are within the head or whether or not they're outside of the head. Dr. Resnick's article with the largest research on voices malingering in the world indicates that 38% of almost 1,000 people that were examined report voices from inside their head. And it stops. You're going to buy that guy yesterday? He doesn't know what he's talking about. This young lady is not guilty of the killing of her children because she was suffering from a disease and defect, as His Honor instructed you. And they're not going to be able to prove otherwise. And it's their burden, not ours.
She knew the difference between right and wrong, and whether she could conform her behavior to the requirements of the law. And, all during this time, between September and December of 2022, she's interacting with friends, with family, teachers, gym staff, the nanny, people at gymnastics, interacting with them in public spaces, in public ways, driving her kids around, all throughout that time, able to know the difference between right and wrong, able to conform her behavior to the law and to the requirements of society, and interacting with others and presenting herself as a functioning adult, a functioning mom. You know that she knew the difference between right and wrong during that time because she had those thoughts at the beginning of December of harming her kids. And she told Patrick and her mother about them. But who she didn't tell is important and very telling. She didn't tell a single provider, not Tufts, not Gelada, not Jennifer McAllister, not Dukes, no one at McLean, no one at MGH, no one at South Shore. Didn't tell any of them. And why? Because the police might take away her kids. That's a rational thought. That telling mandated reporters that you're having a thought of harming your kids, that they might be taken away for their safety, that's a rational thought. And it also shows she knew it was a bad thought, a wrong thought. Because you don't think someone's going to take your kids away because you're thinking something positive or neutral. It's because it's bad, it's because it's wrong, it's because it's against the law. So she knew that it was wrong. And she was able to conform her behavior to the law because she didn't tell those providers. She went in and met with them and talked about what she was experiencing and talked about her depression. And not only did she not tell them, she lied to them. They asked her, are you having thoughts of harming others? Do you have homicidal ideation? She told Tufts no. She told Gelada no. She told Dukes no. She told Goodhart no. Every day at McLean, she said no. At MGH, she said no. So not only is she hiding it, she's lying about it. She's controlling her behavior. She's controlling the presentation she presents to her providers. You heard from Patrick. When he's leaving, Dawson is sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets and green beans out of a bowl. There's the crime scene photo of 2 bowls on the couch. Yes, the pink one seems to have some vegetables in it, but there's the blue one there as well. And Patrick saw Dawson eating the chicken nuggets and green beans. So why would the defendant make that up? Why would she say she's doing that during the phone call? Because if she's already killed the kids because of a voice and being compelled and it being against her will and she's like a puppet, then she can't get a call and miss it and then call the person back and have a conversation and then hang up. A puppet can't do those things. Those are decisions and choices and actions that she's controlling. So she has to explain away the phone call because her behavior and her ability to have the phone call don't make sense if she's being compelled by her voice, if she's not in control. And there are a few reasons why the voice doesn't make sense. The first is she immediately obeyed it. Dr. Resnick, their expert, the one who knows everything about postpartum psychosis, he teaches other psychiatrists and psychologists. He writes books and chapters and articles about how this is a huge red flag if someone immediately obeys a voice. You heard him talk about Andrea Yates, about how she heard voices to kill her children for months. And what did she do? She committed herself 5 times. She tried to kill herself twice to avoid harming her children. It said that was all accurate.
Let's move on from that.
Lindsay Clancy hears his voice one time and does it. Doesn't try to lock herself in the bathroom, call Patrick, call 911. Doesn't try to leave. Leaving little children alone for 20, 30 minutes, not the greatest option, but it's better than killing them. She doesn't try any tactics to avoid the voice. She just obeys. Another red flag that Resnick was asked about and teaches and writes about is that she only heard the voice one time. She never heard it before, and she hasn't heard it since. So how that works. It's a red flag that she's making up the voice. Another one is that what she said the voice told her isn't consistent. At the hospital, she says the voice said, you have to kill your children so you can kill yourself because they'll suffer without you. What she tells a lot of the doctors is, it says, this is your last chance, you have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself. And then she tells the chaplain, a third version, you have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself because they're in danger. There's these 3 different versions. Another flag red flag, it doesn't make sense that she's saying the voice says all these different things. And then the fourth thing that doesn't make sense about the voice is that it's vague in its command. It doesn't tell her how to kill the kids, where, with what, nothing. It says kill the kids so you can kill yourself. So she had to choose where, the basement. She had to choose how, strangulation. She had to choose with what, exercise ban, Choose again, exercise ban. Choose again, exercise ban. She had to choose how to kill herself. Now, if you're being compelled by this voice, and you have no free will whatsoever, you're just doing, your body's acting on the voice, why wouldn't you just kill yourself the same way you killed the children? You strangled them, you hang yourself. That's acting on compulsion, that's no choice. She tried 3 different ways. You know it was deliberate premeditation because of the way she killed them and the way they died. And the order also shows a rationality. The order she killed them in. Because Cora and Dawson are older. If she had tried to strangle one in front of the other, they would have known this is bad. And they would have tried to intervene or run and hide. And she had a very limited time. She didn't have time to try to find a child who ran off and hid. So taking Dawson first and moving him to a separate room, having Cora stay with Callan and having Dawson go in another room, that's rational. That makes sense. That's ordered thinking. And so it made sense rationally to remove him and separate him first and kill him first. And she brought him into that room, into the office, and closed the door, and she wrapped that band around his little neck. And she squeezed until he was unconscious. As the blood's pooling in his face and causing those blood vessels to burst, causing him pain and panic and confusion. And defense calls Dr. La Posada to say, no, it wasn't 20 or 30 seconds. It was only 5 or 10 seconds until he went unconscious. I'm sorry, how many seconds is it okay for them to have been in pain and panic and confusion? How about it wasn't okay for 1 second for any of those children to feel that? And they all felt it, all for up to 30 seconds. And then she continued strangling their limp bodies for 1 to 2 minutes to make sure they were dead. Deliberate premeditation. And then extreme atrocity and cruelty. The indifference that she showed to their pain, to their struggle, to their suffering, leaving them there on the floor with the bands around their necks, completely indifferent, because she had a plan and she was following it through. Just think of that. The being strangled and the pain and the confusion that they're going through, and it's being done by their mom. Their mom is the one that's hurting them. Their mom is the one that's killing them. That's extreme atrocity and cruelty.